Welcome to my final year project video demonstration created by me from studying at the Technological University of the Shannon Midlands Midwest Clonmel Digital Campus, where I studied Creative Media and Design Bachelor Honours degree. My name is Fortune Ndlovu and I'm a full stack web developer. My final year project is effectively a software development contribution into the software development community through the implementation of a complex web app replication. The reason why I undertook this endeavor of building a complex web app replication was to effectively demonstrate proficiency in programming and UX UI engineering. Throughout this video demonstration of the final year project, we will essentially cover the technology stack and statistics, basic UX and UI and implementation, current user activity management, multiple user interactions, and conclude with a personal and professional reflection. When we navigate to our project's directory in Visual Studio Code, you'll notice that we have package.json file open. This file essentially holds all of the packages that our web app is using. And off the bat, you can already see that we are using React as our primary framework and version 18.2.0, and some of its React packages such as Bootstrap, DOM, icons, etc., even React testing libraries, right? And what you'll also notice is we're using browser image compression version 2.0.2. This essentially compresses our images before they get sent to the database, reducing storage usage, increasing web app performance. And speaking of databases, we are using Firebase, okay, version 10.8.0, okay, and we're deploying our web app on GitHub pages, okay, and in Firebase, we are using its most modern services. So if we navigate to Firebase file, you'll notice that we are importing some of Firebase's software development kits, right, and initializing them with our app, and we're exporting these services so our app can use them throughout the web app, okay? And these services that we're importing are Firestore, storage, and authentication. Okay. Firestore for real-time database for storing user activities, and storage for handling image uploads, and authentication for user authentication management. Firebase is essentially a NoSQL database for storing user activities and related data, right? So these software development kits that we're importing, we're initializing our app to use these services, right? And then that means then throughout the web app, we can actually use the database to store the authentication instance. And we're already using the authentication instance because in this code, we're returning the user ID from the authentication instance, which we'll use throughout the code, and we'll explore more in more detail in a later section of the video. If we navigate to the statistics, you'll notice that we have 146 files in this project, specifically in the source folder. This is where all of our project essentially lives, right? And the most language used is in fact JavaScript, okay? And if we navigate to GitHub, you'll notice that we have in fact 3 branches, okay? Master, develop, and GitHub pages. The master branch has all of the code files that has the most efficient code, the most up-to-date code. Develop branch is essentially where we develop our code and then we push those developments into master. GitHub pages has the most up-to-date, the most efficient code that is then deployed on the web, okay? And you'll notice that we have 399 commits at rate, and our project is in fact deployed. We have 2 stars, 2 watching, and we have 13 deployments. And again, for the languages used, we're using JavaScript at most with an 84.2 usage within the web app, and HTML being its least with a 0.2%, okay? The project is deployed, right? And if we navigate to the URL of the project, this is essentially the project sign-up page. As you can see, it is clean and consistent. If you navigate to the login page, it is also clean and consistent. And if we navigate to the dashboard of a signed up user, you can see that it is also clean and consistent, right? I initially created activities to showcase the web app interface design and user experience, right? You can see state changes based on user interactions, okay? And it is also accessible and responsive, right? As you can see, it's perceivable, operable, and robust. And if we navigate to the code and firstly go into our app.js file, you notice that this file essentially holds all of the routes for our project. There are a lot of routes here, right? Even routes with dynamic variables for rendering components on that unique URL path, right? And also, if we navigate to the top, for each path, we are rendering components for that path. And that then allows us to essentially have different headers and footers depending on the path that we are on. And if we go to the pages folder, you'll see that we have effectively all of the web app pages. Our homepage file is utilizing React Bootstrap again for that responsiveness. Okay. And you'll notice that essentially for the container in the homepage, we have the row and we have columns within that row and rendering components for that column. Okay. So what's essentially happening is we are creating a page with and importing components respectively. It allows a more organic, interactive, and responsive user interactions. And for each page, it also has a style sheet, right? A CSS file. And this way it allows for a more maintainable and scaling purposes because we have a cleanly laid out folder structure. Okay, so I'm going to create a new user, but before I do, I want to navigate to Firebase quickly. And as you can see, as of this time, we have no users for this project yet, right? And for storage, we have no files yet, okay? And for Firestore database, we have no data, we have no collections, we have no documents. Essentially, our database is ready to go. We just need to add data, okay? So let's do that. Let's add data. I'm going to sign up a new user. Okay, so this is the UI that a newly signed up user initially sees. I'm going to create some data for this user. Okay, so data has been created for this user. If we navigate to Firebase and refresh, so our Firestore has been populated with data. As you can see, a new user's collection has been created, a document has been created to represent that user, and that user has in fact data, and you can see they're being populated. Okay, and for authentication, you can see a user has been in fact created, and storage has a folder and with the image for the user that was created. Okay, so what that means essentially, when a new user is created, an authentication instance occurs that creates that user. And then what we also do is add a new collection, and collection is sort of like a storage. And then inside the storage, we have units, which are documents with the data in question. If we navigate back to our web app, we can create an activity. So this is the UI for the newly created activity, and we can also edit the activity to add more data. Okay, and now go back to the home page, you can see that it was in fact created. I'm going to add a couple more activities. Okay, so we have created 3 activities, and let's navigate to all of our activities. And as you can see, we have 3 activities, and we can also filter the activities. And we can also edit them as well. Yeah, light morning walk. And we can also delete them from here, right? And we can also edit more inputs. Okay. You know, you may want to add, you just may want to remove this image and then add another image. Okay. And navigate to, see that's actually created there. And if we click on it, if we navigate to the code, we have essentially created multiple functions inside this user activities manager file. And for user to create an activity, edit and delete an activity, right? So when the user creates an activity, an argument is passed into this create activity function, into this parameter new activity here. And what we're essentially doing is we're getting that data that the user has filled in and we're adding it into a document inside a user activities collection. And we'll also include the user ID of the user that was currently signed in, being the user that actually created the activity. What we're returning in this function is an object with the user's data as well as the document reference ID for that newly created activity. Okay. And we also have functions for edit and activity, same principles for deleting as well. The only difference is we're operating batch operations. What that means is we're sending multiple operations to the server to reduce requests and responses to the database, again, increasing our web app performance, right? And you'll notice that what this file is also returning is essentially a manual entry component that gets past the create activity as a prop, as well as the my activities table that gets past the user activities, as well as the edit activity function and delete activity, right? For the manual entry form, the create activity function being used looks like this, right? So essentially pass an object of the with the data the user has entered and into the onCreate function. And then we also check if the ID has then been created. That would then mean that we have added a document to Firebase and we've gotten the document ID reference, right? And then we navigate to this unique path to display the activities that the user has created. And same principle for my activities table, right? We essentially pass in the functions and then we map over the activities, and essentially for each activity we generate a table and plug in the user's data, and then we also have buttons for each index for the activity inside the activities array, and that also have methods and that also invoke the functions in the user activities manager, okay, for editing and deleting, right? Okay, so I've created multiple users and I can search for them. And I'm going to search for Paul Green. Okay, see, he only has one activity created, but I can follow him. And if I navigate to the home page, and because he created his activity after me, it comes out at the top and I can see it here. And I like it. I like the activity. So I can like it and I can also comment on it. Okay. And I want to also follow another user. It's Victor Novas. Okay, and I can follow him as well. And I see his activity there being on top. Okay, so I follow 3 people now, and I only have 1 activity, and I can see their activities also on my dashboard. I can like them, and I can also comment on their activities. You'll also notice that for the comments, they get temporarily removed. But if I press the like button again, you can see then who liked the activities and the comments as well, and I was the only one that commented on it. Okay. So if we look at what it looks like from the other user's perspective, let's say Paul Green's perspective. So if we go to his profile, okay, that's his activity there, and you can see that um he has a comment from Mona Lisa. So I love the view, Paul, and he can like it. You can also, oh, he doesn't like that. He can delete the comment. Okay. And Paul doesn't follow Mona because her activities are not even on his dashboard. And you can see here, he's following no one. So he can also search for Mona. You can follow her. When navigate back to the home page, her activity is now there. And he can also like her activity. Let's say, okay. And if we look at the code, as the currently signed in user, and if I effectively search for another user and then I follow them, what's happening is I effectively add their ID inside an array called following. That means then I can fetch their data in a later section. And this is the later section. We're currently in the center dashboard where we effectively want to display the data of the users that we're following, right? So as the currently signed in user, we're going to get my documents, and then we're also going to get my followings array. We're going to map over that array and essentially get the 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 documents of the users that are in the followings array, right? And we want to get their data, because if we navigate quickly to Firebase and in the users collection, and for instance, Paul Green, for an example, he follows a user, right? And that means then their ID is added into the followings array, right? That then we can fetch the ID, we can then fetch the data that corresponds to this ID. And in the user activities collection, and you'll notice that every activity has a user ID. This is the user ID of the user that created the ID. So we can fetch only the activities that are equal to the currently signed in user being this ID. Because you can think of it as a currently signed in user, and I create a document or an activity, my user ID will be attached to that activity. And if I follow another user, their ID will be added into my followings array, right? And then I can also fetch the data in a later section. Okay. That's how we're effectively able to display the activities of the currently signed in user being Paul, but also the users that Paul is also following. So Mona's ID is inside the followings array inside Paul's array. Okay, and we're mapping over that array and then we're displaying that data. Okay, and effectively, you know, we also fetch, like, to display the activities themselves, right? So we've just gotten the data, like, their name and their image, their profile image, but to get the data, their activities. And so instead of only fetching the activities of the currently signed in user, okay, firstly, of course, we need to get the data of the currently signed in user. We query where the user ID inside the documents is equal to the currently signed in user, and we get that those documents, and then we also map over those documents again to creating a new array, creating a new object of that data for immutability and garbage collection purposes. And for the followings, for the users that the current for the users that the current user is following, we effectively also query the the user activities collection with to see if the user ID matches the user's the user's ID, right? So we literally query for inside the current user activities where the user ID equals the following user ID, and then if so, we get those documents and we map over those documents. And then now we have the activities of the currently signed in user, and as well as the the users that the current users following's activities, and what we can do is effectively concatenate them, essentially merge the two activities. And I bet, effectively the most recent activity, as we mentioned previously, will be displayed at the top. But this way, it allows us to organically merge the activities and display them, because they're now we effectively populate them inside a use state variable that we can then using dot notation inject inside our UI.
Yeah, so I learned a lot from building the complex web app replication, and I'm truthfully grateful for have gotten the opportunity to demonstrate proficiency in programming and UX UI engineering. I learned to embrace change through curiosity, problem solving, and exploring complex documentation and convert into implementation via experimentations. And, essentially knowing what you know now is enough for you to get started, and you'll learn the rest along the way of building such a complex implementation. Right. And what's next for me in the future is to continue being a sponge and embracing change, continuously improving through problem solving, exploring complexities that output optimal user experiences at rate. I would also like to extend a sincere thank you to all the lecturers and staff at the Technological University of the Shannon, Midlands Midwest, Clonmel Digital Campus for their exceptional teachings and practical explorations through problem solving over the last 4 years. I would also like to thank my peers for continuously improving with you over the last 4 years. It's been truthfully magical growing with you all. I'd also like to thank my family, especially my mom, for making everything possible. Thank you.